Like this constant that, oh yeah, I'll get to that, then I can just relax. Then I can, and I think this plagues a lot of men. And I think that's quite an insidious mindset to buy into.
I was like, take bigger risks. That's number one. Pete, younger Pete, take bigger risks. And then number two was stop worrying so much about what other people think. So take bigger risks and stop worrying so much about what other people think.
Welcome to the Awaken Man podcast. You join me and Pete Taylor. How are you doing, Pete?
Good. How are you, mate?
I'm good. And we were just discussing before the podcast started how easy it is being a dad on his own in the morning. No other inputs. It makes a massive difference. Maybe in line with what we're going to be talking about on today's podcast, which is pain, uncertainty, and constant work. The three constants for any man. I think the pain of getting the kids ready in the morning, it's inevitable, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like we were just talking about this, like as many of you listeners may well know, me and my now ex-wife, you know, she's moved out the house, so we're separated. So I have Leo during the week, so 5 days during the week. So I get him ready for nursery and so on. But I'm finding it easier because it's just me dealing with it. I'm not having to deal with anything else. I'm like, right, I'm just going to focus on that, focus on Leo, focus on me. And it's it's actually an easier process.
Oh, I think there's no expectation of anyone else to, and I think there's a lot of learning here as well. There's no expectation for anyone else to do anything for you.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of guys, and we were actually even talking about Awaken Man as the way that we coach and we support men, is sometimes when men believe there's someone coming to rescue them or save them, they stop themselves from stepping it the fuck up, really. And that's something that I've learned, is that when I have had to rely on myself, I always deliver. Like even just on the micro moments like this morning, went super smooth, everything was good, and I didn't have to rely on anyone, and it was phenomenal. When I've got someone else to rely on, I think that's when I let my standards slip sometimes. So yeah, I think it's important. Anyway, I just wanted to share that before we got going. And today's podcast is an interesting one. It might be one of those conversations that you didn't know that you needed to hear, because it's one of those things, and this is something that I've actually taken a lot from working alongside Pete and alongside especially Yassine, is Yassine is very, very good at giving you concepts, theories, thinking that you never even know that you needed to consider. That's been a big part of what I've loved about working with him as a coach, as a business partner, as a mentor, as a friend. He presents me with thinking that I didn't even know I needed to acknowledge, accept, or come to terms with. And these three constants in men's lives that exist, when I feel that you come to terms with these, when you fully accept these as truths, as actual truth, your life will change. And I'll quickly share my story, then Pete can share his and we'll dive in. But in my early 20s, juvenile, it could have been, what's the word for it? Blissful ignorance, whatever. I went on this happiness binge, and Pete, I imagine, has done the same too. Is when you start in personal development, it's very positive infused, almost toxic positivity. Everything's about being positive and happy and leading with great vigor, and I created this lens that I believed I needed to be joyous, happy, like get rid of struggle, and I had to be positive all the time. And what was going on was I became the guy who was on the external, happy, positive, happy-go-lucky, smile on my face, that I had a clenched jaw, and inside was a lot of anger, a lot of resent, a lot of these feelings that I felt that I shouldn't have. And I was like, I shouldn't have these feelings because I'm not this person who feels these feelings. And I found myself suppressing a lot of that. And I think that's what's led to a lot of my challenges in my later 20s and early 30s. And I believe that because I'm very, very fucking self-aware, I came to this very early. And I know men that don't even experience this until their 40s and 50s and maybe even never really come to terms with, oh my gosh, I've got all these unresolved feelings inside of me, and I get a lot of struggle from this. And so what I wanted to do in this podcast today is just give you some of the thinking, not only just me, Yassine, Pete, and the experience of working with men for the last 2 years specifically has helped me with, but equally some of the theories that are suggested by some of the best psychotherapists in the world. So that's my experience. Pete, did this resonate with you at all?
Yeah, big time. Slightly different, albeit I'm sure you can relate to this, and I'm sure a number of you guys listening to this, if you've been into your personal development for a while, you might be able to relate to this. It's like in my younger years, I was the guy. So this is like my mid-teens to late teens, early 20s. I was the guy out of all my pals to be into personal development, self-development, going to the gym, self-improvement, right? And so I was like, the guys, oh, you know, Pete's always doing these things. He's always on a different level. He's always so confident. So, but what that meant for me internally was that I couldn't show weakness. Right. So it like, I was like, oh, yeah, I do have to be on this level all the time, and that I can't go through pain. I do have to be fucking happy to go, you know, the go lucky guy all the time. Because that's like my perception of, as though my pals are looking at me as though I'm that guy. And so like I was ignoring, I'm not even ignoring. I was just like, well, yeah, maybe I can just be happy all the time. And I don't have to go through pain, and I can be on this like super high level all the time. And I you know, I can't wait until I get to X. Like I can't wait till I get to that like £1 million business when I've got loads of money coming in, and I've got the nice car and the model wife and the nice house and I can't wait till I get to that like euphoric moment, and then everything will be cool, and then I won't have to like be hiding all this like pain that I'm actually going through. No, but that's you know, you come to learn that's bollocks, because I got all of those things, right? And I was still feeling all the pain. So, and it was like, and this is what we're going to talk about today, is that pain, specifically pain, is something that we have to kind of embody, that, you know, especially if you fucking live long enough, that you are going to go through considerable amounts of pain, whether that's minor or that's major, like losing a loved one. I remember when I lost my best pal, and I remember that I was 24, nearly 25. He was nearly 25. It was just 2 months before his 25th birthday. And up to that point, and I remember fucking thinking this as well, like even before he passed away, I was like, I haven't really gone through any like really, really hard pain in my life. Like I haven't really gone through like mega trauma. I was considering myself quite lucky. And then my best mate dies. And it's just fucking, you know, I can put a smile on my face about it now, but for like 2 years, that was horrendous pain. I got so much trauma from that. And so, but now I've come to terms with this, is that you go through life long enough, you're going to have big moments where you go through considerable amounts of pain.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't even want to say it now, because like you've just said it and then that happened. I don't even want to jinx it. It's just, I'm not going to say it. Just about pure, just weird feeling that I don't want to say that. But what I think really resonated there is that when you shared about, I'll get the house, I'll get the car, I'll get the wife, then I can be pain free. And then that's what happens with a lot of, you know, guys, you know, maybe speaking for women too, but it's like, when I get there, I'll be happy. When I get there, then I can take my foot off the gas. And it's kind of like this constant that, oh yeah, I'll get to that, then I can just relax. Then I can, and I think this plagues a lot of men. And I think that's quite an insidious mindset to buy into, because you think, and Sam Harris, actually, the philosopher, put in like a really good, we're always trying to make our way back to the present. And I was like, when I first heard it, I didn't really get it. And I listened to it a couple of times. It's called, in his book, Coming Alive, I think it's called, not Coming Alive, or Waking Up. And he said that we're always looking for a way back to the present. So what we say to ourselves is, oh, I'll get all those tasks done today, and then I'll be able to relax. I'll go and do all this, then I can relax. Then I'll go and get that house, and then I can take my foot off the gas. Oh, I'll go and get that promotion, then I'll take my foot. And the take the foot off the gas means I'm going to be present, I'm going to relax, I'm going to be free of pain. And actually, he talks about that mindset just doesn't ever happen for anyone, because even if you do take your foot off the gas physically, your brain's like, well, what are you going to do next? What's going on in your career? It'll start cannibalizing things that you need to improve. So we're wired for growth, right? So yeah, it's really interesting. Let me just give you the 10,000 foot view of these three constructs before we just dive in and go into each one. Okay, so one of the most famous psychotherapists in the world, he recently did the Netflix documentary with Jonah Hill. We're going to be talking about Jonah Hill on one of the next two podcasts about boundaries. So he worked with Jonah Hill. He works with the likes of Jay-Z, Gwyneth Paltrow, Joaquin Phoenix, some of the who's who of the Hollywood world, the screenwriters, the business moguls, a guy called Phil Stutz. Now, why is he so famous? Is because some of the theories and some of the concepts that he presents to these very, very successful, famous people. Now, the thing that you might be thinking is that why is it so important to listen to someone who's working with famous, successful people? It's exactly what Pete just mentioned. We all have that thought that when I get all the money, all the fame, all the prizes, all the trappings of our success, then I won't struggle. But the actual inverse is true. Now, that for me, when I realized that, and I actually asked Barry Michaels, his partner, that I said to him, Barry, like, I'm just really curious can you ask me to answer this one thing? And he was like, yeah, he goes, that's a really great question, because he said, fame actually is one of the worst things for the human condition. And actually all these successes that these people have just amplify the need to do this work. And what Barry and Phil both talk about is this idea that the three constants in life that we're going to have, no matter what, are pain, uncertainty, and constant work. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through each one and give you ways to walk into those things. And that's something that I learned from studying Phil Stutz's work, is that when you learn to turn towards your pain, your life will change forever. Now, what this means is that pain in itself, a lot of us experience pain, and Pete was talking about his pain before, and I had an empathetic pain. I was listening to Pete talk about his best buddy dying, and I just thought about my own best buddy dying. And I was like, the pain that I experienced, it was a small amount of pain. I could feel it in my chest. But that was just ego pain. It was the fear of loss. Yeah, it was a fear. Real pain for many people they don't actually get physical pain. It's a lot of egoic pain, like the fear of loss. I'm really fearing the pain of loss in any moment. So we're never really dealing with like physical pain, like a lot of us don't. We're dealing with ego pain. And it's the same with failure. Like a lot of failure is not actually failure. It's ego failure. And so what I think a big point here is that we've got to learn to turn towards our pain, our fear, our discomfort, because that is often the pathway to where we are going to grow the most. You wanted to share there, Pete?
Yeah, in fact, the last sentence you just said there, like leaning towards the pain, and that's where we're going to grow the most. What popped into my head there immediately was the very recent conversations that I had with Denise, which has led to our separation, because there were moments there where both Denise and I have had to lean into pain. We've got to have some difficult conversations around our future, and there is massive uncertainty there. There is massive amounts of pain there. But both of us knowing, because we've both done personal development, we've both done the work, that leaning into this is going to lead to a better future. It's just painful now and it's uncertain now.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge how you're dealing with this, man. It's like just being able to speak about it so openly. You can hear like the constant work part, Pete. You can see that you've done the work. I acknowledge that, man. For you all listening in as well, just being able to just deal with something that pragmatically, even acknowledging the emotions that are coming up and still dealing in a pragmatic sense is phenomenal, man. And like the next sharing here is at times we will experience long periods of severe discomfort, and often we will want to just escape it. And I can, maybe you want to share a bit more there, but it's like, this isn't something that just goes away tomorrow. You're probably acknowledging that you're going to have to deal with this discomfort, this pain for a certain amount of time. And I think that is one of the most settling experiences for me when I'm like, I'm in this for a while. I'm going to be experiencing this struggle for a while. It's not going to go away tomorrow. And I think that sometimes our struggle is exacerbated when we're like, I just want this to go away now. I just want it to go. And that's when we turn to things like drugs, alcohol, numbing, porn. Like, I remember when I was dealing with my divorce, I turned to drugs, alcohol, numbing, all the things that I shouldn't have. Really shameful. Yeah, I did it for like 2-3 weeks and I just wanted the pain to go away. It did make the pain go away in a very, very short space of time, but it came back tenfold in shame about what happened. So that's what I think is really important, is like pain for a lot of people is just severe discomfort, psychological discomfort for a long time.
And this is my experience here, is that every time I've gone through pain, at the end of it, there has been light, and then I have had tremendous growth. Like even now, and I can talk about this with Danny, like I never truly thought that I would get growth from that, because it was my best buddy. He felt like blood to me. And ever since Danny, there's never been anyone else that's come even close to like that bond that we had. Like I thought that bond was normal. It's fucking not. Right. But now, I use that. I use that as energy. I like Danny inspires me. Like, I'm going to go and crush this next part of my life and this next chapter of my life in memory of Danny. And I'm thinking about Danny, and, I use that as energy. And I've also it's given me so much growth, but I couldn't have seen that then. I couldn't have seen that for the first couple of years that I would have come out the other end. And I'm not saying it was a good thing, because it fucking wasn't. right? I'd have him back in a flash. But to be able to look at these moments, and even now, like with the divorce that I'm going through with Denise, I know it is an opportunity for growth. I know at the other end, I will come out a stronger and a better man. And however long that takes, right? I don't know how long it's going to take. It might take 3 months. It might take 3 years. I don't know, but I know that I'm hanging around. I'm not fucking going anywhere. And I know that I have two options. And to keep this mega simple, I have two options. I can sit and bathe in the past and really in me being a victim and me being poor me. I can sit there, and it's fucking easy for me to sit there actually. And I'll be honest, it feels pretty good, right? Because it's just like, oh, poor Pete. And this is really hard and this is really painful. I can do that. The more difficult route, the second option is that, okay, how can I grow from this? What can I learn from this? Like where did our relationship go wrong? Like, how can I improve as a man here? This is hard work because I've got to face some truths here, and it's difficult facing those truths, but that's my options. I either sit in the past and bathe in victimhood, or I look into growth and how can I grow from this? I've kept that mega simple, two options.
Yeah, well, actually, what you're talking about there, and I think you've made references to a few times already, is this idea of buying into post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic growth. So there is a level of, let's use the word trauma. Trauma, a severe bout of pain. So when you can say it's traumatic, someone says, "Oh, it's traumatic." What they've experienced is a very acute dose of pain. Yeah, whether it's losing a loved one, whether it's a war zone, whether there's been severe, discomfort in the house over an acute phase, very short, painful part, that's trauma. Now, post-traumatic, so after the trauma, you can either have post-traumatic stress, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where people do buy into that and they do feel like that. And there's moments that trigger more stress and they feel, but there's also a concept that's actually really, really powerful called post-traumatic growth, PTG. So PTG is like what Pete's referenced on numerous occasions. After a bout of pain, here comes the growth. And there's actually a book called Super Better, and she talks about this at length, and she goes into PTG, like post-traumatic growth. Because I've been through this hard time, this hardship, this real struggle, now I'm going to reap the benefits and grow off the back end of it. It's like the 10 by 10 German volume training squats, if you've ever done it. If you've ever gone into the gym.
Yeah, I have.
If you've ever gone into the gym and
Regret.
Yeah, if you've ever gone into the gym and I didn't even know what they were when I first did this. It's like 10 by 10 GVT squat. And then that is trauma to the muscle. And if you're not ready for that, wow, you're in pain a lot for days afterwards, right? But what happens is that you tell yourself subconsciously that pain is going to lead to growth. And technically that's what you're doing in bodybuilding and building your body. You're just like constantly saying, this burn is good, this hurt is good, it's going to make me grow. And that's what bodybuilding is all about. Pete's very much into his bodybuilding. He's a great bodybuilder. But in the gym, that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah. I've done numerous bouts of German volume training. And guys, if you're listening to this and you train in the gym, I would give it a go. Prep yourself because it's difficult. But a big part of it's a mental game. Like, because you're doing 10 sets of a heavy weight of one exercise. And, when you do 4 or 5 sets of one thing, it's like, cool, this is a lot. I can move on to something different. But no, you're just halfway through. Right. But, I enjoy the gym because I put my muscles through pain, but there's also mental pain there as well. Because you're having to push through, your body going, right, that's enough now, mate. And your brain going, yes, you just give in now, mate. But you can push through that. And there's another form of pain. And although like what I have just referenced there in losing my best buddy, going through a divorce, that's like fucking big. That's like high level, big shit going on there. But the pain that we're also talking about doesn't just have to be this like big traumatic event. It could absolutely be that, hey, like I just need to have a conversation with my wife. It's not about us separating or divorcing or anything like that. It's just that she keeps leaving the dishes out and it's actually starting to really get to me, and I just need to have a conversation with her. There's going to be a slight bit of pain, it's like 2% in that conversation, but it's that constant that it's always there, and rather than ignoring that, it's that we for us to grow as guys, you got to lean into that, and you got to keep having those conversations, or you got to keep getting up early and going to the gym because that's hard and it's painful, or you got to keep pushing through the workouts and so on and so on. So it's the big things and the small things.
Here's some pragmatic ways to become better at pushing into pain, guys. There's actually a tool called the reversal of desire, which was created by Phil Stutz. It's one of the main tools that if you've ever studied the tools, the whole documentary Stutz talks about these ideas of tools, psychological imagery tools that you can use. And one of the things that we teach guys is we teach them psychological tools to help them deal with things like pain. So you just say, I love pain. Pain sets me free. Bring it on. Reverse the desire to walk away from pain and start walking towards it. Now, you could be listening to this, like just list out in your mind's eye, what's one of the things that you feel would bring you pain today? Like a painful conversation, a hard conversation. Could it be a workout that you've been avoiding? Like you listen to this saying, oh, do you know what? I skipped my workout this morning. It pains me to think I'm going to be tired when I get home and finish my day at 8, and I'm going to have to go and jog, walk the dog, go out for a run, do 100 burpees. That's pain. Okay. So reverse, like turning towards that pain will set you free. It will massively change you. So that's one, is to reverse the desire to move away from pain. The second one is learn to do like long, hard endurance tasks. This can be something really simple like a fast. An endurance task is fasting. Go without food for 2 days. I literally did it last week because I felt like it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go 2 days without food. It was an endurance task. It was pain. It was like, there was a bit of uncertainty there as well, which we'll talk about next. But the challenges, deprivation, all that sort of stuff. And like, you can even do this in a micro moment. Like say you're a cyclist and you do some turbo training work. Play the game where you're not allowed to wipe the sweat from your brow and let it drip down and see how long you can just put off, the impulse to wipe your brow. Just little things, the games you can play with yourself, because ultimately it's our part X, our self-saboteur that helps us avoid pain. Because what we do is we equate deprivation to death. If I deprive myself of that thing, if I deprive myself of that reward right now, I'm going to die, where the inverse is true. Depriving myself of something is actually the path to life. Yeah. So Pete might have an impulse to lose his shit or feel sorry for himself. That's his impulse. He deprives himself of that impulse, of acting on that impulse. And that's how he's maintained strong confidence and discipline throughout his struggles and challenges. Go on, Pete.
Yeah, good. Here's an impulse that, I know I'm not the only one here, but jerking off, right? There's an impulse there, right? Whether that's, scanning through social media and you happen to see a beautiful lady or man that floats your boat, right? And then you get an urge or there's something that you need to be doing in your business or in your life, your relationship, or even your fitness. And then like procrastinator head kicks in and go, oh, why don't you just jerk off instead? Right there, my friends, is an urge. Here is what Ben's saying there, like an endurance task. It's like, right, well, I'm not going to like follow through with that urge. I'm going to do something different that's more positive, just to like, hold that off. And here's a sense of building discipline as well.
Yeah, actually, we had a conversation with our clients and they read this book called The Multi-Orgasmic Man. And they talked about this idea it's probably a sexual concept I wanted to explore. I haven't fully explored it yet, but it's like you don't ejaculate. You take yourself to the point of ejaculation like an edge for multiple weeks, months even, and it trains your body to be able to to have an orgasm without the ejaculation, to almost dissociate those two sensations. And I was like, wow, this is revolutionary. But that, I think, would be an awful lot of pain, like perceived pain and perceived deprivation, right?
Yeah, I got the book on that. Like,
did you?
Right. Yeah, I've got the book, so I'll have a read of it. Maybe and we'll do a podcast on it because I'm sure. Deal. I'm sure they'd be interested in that.
Yeah, guys, but
it interests me, so it must interest the other guys.
Yeah, and just bringing it back to pain, guys. Really just making sure that what we're doing is we're talking about impulse. We're talking about the pain of impulse. I need to have it now. The pain, I need to have it now. But that what I said before, that like long-term discomfort. Like severe discomfort, Like when you're going through something really hard, whether it's a business challenge, a relationship challenge, or a physical challenge, an injury, a back pain, you just want to escape that pain. And you just got to remember, you've got to come back to that and say, no, I should be feeling like this. There's actually something I want to share, actually. This is something that really revolutionized the way I saw my body, but I think it exists in all facets of life. Our body is always giving us feedback, and it goes through weakness from restriction and pain. And that's how the three messages from the brain. First of all, you receive weakness. So you go into the gym and your shoulder doesn't feel too like strong that morning. You're like, oh, you know, I'm normally shoulder press, 40s, and I can't really even pick up the 25s, 30s without them being taxing. That's weakness. And that's just a feedback loop from the brain saying something's wrong. You're not prepped. You're not ready. The nervous system's not ready. And then what we do, sometimes we just push past it. Now, if we keep pushing past that, then the body will give us what's called restriction. You'll get minor restrictive feelings in the shoulder or the back or the hips. And I was like, all right, yeah, I can buy that. I can feel that. Sometimes my hamstring, I can't touch my toes. I've got restricted depth in my toe touch. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. I can have those days. If I ignore that, then I get a pain, which is a pull, a tear, something that really says, listen, my brain's saying you've not paid attention to the restriction, so the weakness, you've not paid attention to the restriction, here's some pain. Now, I thought that only existed in a physiological sense, but what I'm seeing is the polarities to that in a psychological sense as well. We wake up, we do some stuff, we act in a weak manner, weak decisions, weak thinking. We know that, Pete said it on last podcast, we know the difference between the hard choices that we need to make and the ones that we are like the low level decisions we make. That's weakness. Restriction, our life starts to have restriction in it. And then because we have restriction, we're not literally listening to the feedback we're getting from our brain, we get pain. And I think that's how guys end up in severe discomfort. Mm-hmm. So remember that ladder. I'm getting weakness, and then I'm getting restriction, and then I'm getting pain. So I think that's really helpful. I learned it from a chiropractor, and it really helps me. Like when I'm gauging my body in the morning, I do a toe touch. I'm like, is that weakness? Yeah, I'm feeling pretty weak today. I'm not feeling too good. What do I need to do? I need to just breathe. I need to do some decompression work. It's helpful. Ultimately, pain is just a feedback loop for the brain. Okay, so let's dive into uncertainty, because I think this is something that a lot of guys, they just want to avoid uncertainty, and planning, they'll plan to the nth degree because they are so afraid of uncertainty, because they don't know the result. They don't know the action. They don't want to be wrong. And I've put here as well, like so many men want to create certainty, so they will choose a known future, having a life that is 30% fulfilling versus risking an uncertain future that is their heart's desire. Now, that isn't, I made that myself, but that's what I feel. Like some guys will risk their life. They risk their life having a known future, which is 30% fulfilling. It does what, it does what it needs to do. The relationship isn't 100%, but it's okay. Versus the risk of leaving that person and having a fucking incredible relationship. It could be a business. Like, I'm in this business, I'm 30% fulfilled. I'm in a job, I'm 30% fulfilled. The fear of the risk of the uncertainty is what keeps them in that 30% fulfillment.
Yeah.
Through the whole life experiencing that. And that's because they are terrified of uncertainty.
Yeah, listen. So I'm guesting on other people's podcasts. And weirdly, the last two that I've been on, they've both asked me the same question, which is, what would I tell my younger self? What's one thing I would tell my younger self? Now, guys and girls that are listening, ask yourself that question now. What would you tell your younger self? For me, it was two things. It just came out. It was so natural. I was like, take bigger risks. That's number one. Younger Pete, take bigger risks. And then number two was, stop worrying so much about what other people think. So take bigger risks and stop worrying so much about what other people think. Because the last thing that I want to do is get to my deathbed and, hey, Pete, how'd you get on, mate? Like, do you fulfill everything, all your deepest desires and your biggest visions? And I'm like, there were some big moves that I never played because I was thinking about what Sally off of Facebook might think about that. Or whatever that, whatever that looks like. Right, but what Ben just said there, like living life at 30% versus risking, because with risk comes uncertainty, right? Absolutely. But I have absolutely not, I've found this in my life that there's some of these power moves that I've made and they are big risks. Like my previous business, I had a business breakdown and I made a power move. I was like, right, I can choose to stay here and live at 30% of my potential, and I'll be pretty comfortable. Right? Or can make a very uncertain decision and choose to leave and go into and grow the awakened man. And hey, look, that's, for me, fortunately, that's really played out very well. But it involved big risk and it involved a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, I remember you sharing on an earlier podcast, like you didn't just get the uncertainty, you got some pain as well. You got people telling you things that you didn't want to hear.
Oh, God, yeah.
Going on, right? Yeah, it was hard. I think I would agree, like take bigger risks. And actually I can see that I put my own life on hold for a couple of years, worrying about what other people would think about my decision to not be doing like fitness camps in front of everyone, because I was good at it. I was in my zone of excellence, but I was enjoying it. And this is something that Gay Hendricks talks about in The Big Leap, is that you're in your zone of excellence, but your zone of genius is where you have to take a big leap. And that will be an uncertain set sometimes. Like I'm working with a client at the moment, and she recently took a big leap. She left a very well-paid professional career to start her own business. And it was really powerful to watch that as soon as she took the big leap, she was moving into a zone of genius, and it was a really uncertain move. And it's such a powerful thing for people to acknowledge. It's like, that is where you often get a coach. That is like, honestly, if you're thinking of getting a coach or a mentor, because this is something you struggle with, uncertainty, is having someone guide you and hold space for you, challenge you, push you, point things out to you during that space where you're taking that step. This is where coaching is a good coach helps you thrive, right? Really, really powerfully. But let me just bring it back to the uncertainty. That one of the best work I uncovered when I was looking at this part was Philip Zimbardo, a guy he studies this thing called time, which we all know very well, but we don't know to the level of what Zimbardo talks about. Zimbardo talks about what's called time perspective, the way that we view our time. And what a lot of guys do is they spend a lot of their time in the negative future. So we create more uncertainty by playing out future possibilities of where we might fail and reacting to them in the moment. So Pete's got an idea that he wants to go and take a very big risk. So his brain goes, well, here's the 1 or 2 possibilities that could happen. Then here's the 12 that might happen that are negative. And he focuses not on the 2 that are really, really possible and probable, but he can make 20 to 50 ones that might not work. So he doesn't move forward, doesn't move into risk. Now, what we've got to be able to do is consciously say, hey, I'm creating a negative future here and reacting to it. What this is also happening is that we believe that if we predict the future, that we'll be better able to deal with anything that goes wrong in the present. And so we've got to just acknowledge that this is something that the human brain does. So what this means is, if I rehearse tragedy, if I rehearse failure, if I rehearse all these things that might go wrong because I'm trying to deal with uncertainty, I'll be better at dealing with it if it does go wrong, which is bullshit. It's just like, so this is like we think that if we rehearse failure, that we'll be better prepared to deal with it when it happens. That's not true. That isn't true. We actually become worse at dealing with it. Whereas if we rehearse all the possible solutions that can happen in the moment, that's by practicing them in the moment, we become much better at dealing with uncertainty. I hope I've articulated that properly, because that's a really important shift when you understand that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, to couple that, and this is a different tangent, but it's on the same lines, this is why your environment is so freaking important. Because if you're thinking about making some form of move, some form or that involves risk and uncertainty, but the environment that you're in, aka people, right, that maybe you're talking to about that particular move, and they care for you and they want to keep you safe, they may also bathe in that. Oh, that could go really fucking wrong. Oh yeah, I'm not sure I'll do that. That's a big move. Maybe you shouldn't do that. And so you have to be careful who you talk to your goals about, right? And I wrote this on my Instagram the other day, and it's, if the people that you're hanging around with have smaller goals for you than you do, you're hanging around with the wrong people, right? So if the people that you're hanging around with have smaller goals for you than you do, you're with the wrong people.
That's really powerful.
So, you just like be like conscious of that.
I think something I've put here, and something that I think we need to talk to about with uncertainty is this: people think that confidence trumps uncertainty. I love you, Pete. You're so confident. You just deal with all these risks and uncertainties. And I think that confidence is overrated. Okay. So in the face of adversity and uncertainty and all these things that we have to deal with, we don't want to have confidence, because confidence is a result that we get from taking a risk. So I take a risk, it pays off, I get some confidence. Yeah, I go on the stage, I talk, it goes really badly. I still get some confidence because I'm like, okay, I can learn from that. It's a after product. Whereas what we actually want to cultivate is something called self-reliance. Now, the difference between confidence and self-reliance is the ability to say, no matter what, I'll be able to cope or deal with the struggles that lie ahead of me. So it's almost saying things can and will go wrong. But in the face of that, I can deal with this. And that is when I learned this from Glenn Bridges, one of my first coaches. He was amazing. And he taught me this. He's like, Ben, this might not go well for you. This might go wrong. What are you going to do if you don't get that result? And I'm like, this, and this. And he said, that's called self-reliance. You're relying on yourself instead of telling yourself everything's going to go well. Oh yeah, it'll be fine. Nothing's going to go wrong. So when it does go wrong, you're like, oh my God, this shouldn't have gone wrong. Well, that's what a lot of people get really challenged by. I did all this planning. I did all this preparation. It shouldn't have gone this way. And it fucking did. Now what are you going to do? That's where you need self-reliance. And what Pete talked about in the discipline week that we did run on the open week is someone like Pete, myself, you've seen some of the men that we work with is we teach them in the face of this. They've practiced so many times discipline, the ability to do what they said they were going to do or needed to do or had to do. They can rely on their own word. I've committed to this. I can dig myself out of this. And so that is how they become incredible at dealing with uncertainty. They have true confidence, intense trust in their own word. And that's what often helps them out of these situations. So uncertainty is actually trumped by self-reliance. You want to share that, Pete?
No, I like it.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good one. So pragmatic ways about dealing with uncertainty is get around other men who are dealing with these struggles and challenges effectively. The other day, there was a guy on Awaken Man. He's got to raise some like 30,000 in a couple of weeks. And how he's just dealing with that so pragmatically was incredible. And you just see these guys like just deal with the big problems and challenges. Just like, right, yeah, I'm going to do this. They go and make a commitment. They go and take action. And it's great. So be around men who are dealing with it, these kind of struggles and challenges. It'll make you able to do it. The second thing is learning how to reclaim your state, because when we get fearful, we get in fear. I'm in fear. I've lost my control of my state. I'm not pragmatic. I'm not logical. I'm emotional. And knowing that when fear shows up, can you do what I spotted in Pete early on is simultaneously be in a struggle or challenge, but keep making logical, rational decisions to move forward. And that's a fucking skill. That is a skill. That's such an important skill. Jocko Willink talks about this with snipers. In moments of high tension, you think the heart rate would go up, but it actually goes down because they know that the battle is finally upon them. And he talks about this on one of his podcasts. It's like in the moments where shit hits the fan, their protocols come up, they're in action, they settle down. They just settle into their protocols, take action, and they feel better when they're in combat rather than waiting for combat. Waiting for the combat is more psychologically taxing for them.
Nice. Yeah, I fucking love that.
Yeah.
I really like that. This is what we train for.
Yeah.
Right.
It's made like when I heard this, it was on one of his podcasts. He said that what happens when these guys are waiting for the battle, they are actually more stressed because they're like waiting for the uncertainty. But as soon as it's certain, like, yep, there's combat protocols, off we go. I was like, that is incredible. But what Pete talks a lot, if you follow at Pete_Taylor, Pete every single day talks about protocols on his story and like his daily protocols. You can just steal his protocols. It's amazing. It's amazing to see how disciplined he is with that. And it's something you can do too, just steal his protocols. So when shit hits the fan in your life, what does he do? He just sticks to his protocols and he gets through it. And that's how he's probably how you're dealing with the uncertainty that you've got on right now, bro.
Yeah, I didn't, to be honest, I hadn't really, what you just said there, that's why I loved it. What you've just said there about it being a skill set. I hadn't acknowledged that it is a skill set. And although I'm very aware that having protocols in place can get you through like shit that hits the fan. Yeah, I hadn't truly acknowledged it.
Yeah, well, we do archetype work on our certification course, and one of the things that has to happen is the warrior carries a man through the pain. His warrior, and the warrior is the boundary setter, the protocol creator, the habit builder. And that's like ultimately in any time of pain, it's the warrior and the lover that needs to work together. But really interesting when you look at archetype work. Okay, let's switch gears, make sure we get this last one in because I think this is really important. It's constant work. The final one is, dude, you're going to be working constantly. You're never going to be exonerated from the work. You're never going to be able to do personal development and then read that one book and then you're done for the rest of your life. You're constantly going to be doing work. And I think it's juvenile to think otherwise. And, I laughed at my dad, he was like, dude, you need to go and have a therapy session. And he was like, he went to 2 and he's like, yeah, I don't need to go anymore. I was just like,
completed it, mate.
I completed it. And it's like, it's funny. It's just like, that's how he saw it. And that's how he has that in his head. But I'm like, I see therapy as something I'll be constantly doing on and off for the rest of my life. Because it's, it's work, right? I'll be a different guy every time I go back into or go forward into a room where I work with a psychotherapist. And so it's like saying to yourself, I'm going to go to the gym and I'll have muscles for the rest of my life. It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. And there's fucking levels to this. There's levels to everything. Just like there's levels to business, there's levels to your own self-mastery. And it takes a constant work. And I know this because I did this and I see it in all the other guys, I think everyone really truly underestimates the sheer amount of constant work that you have to go through to get to that next level. Even like just talking in something I'm sure we can all relate to, like a business aspect, like growing a certain size of business or like getting all those external things like the big houses and the nice cars and so on. There's a fucking shitload of work that needs to go into that. Like there is a phenomenal amount of work that goes into that. And I see it all the time that guys will just underestimate it in their level of output and the level of work they're willing to put themselves through. And they're like fucking doing 100th of what they probably should be doing, right? For 1/10 of the time, right? And it's the same with your own self-mastery. It never fucking stops. And it is hard and it is constant.
Yeah. Every level has a new devil.
It does. Every single level, there's other things, there's other bosses to kill.
Yeah.
And in particular levels, the bosses are harder, right? And you might not have the skill sets to kill that boss yet. And you got to go through some more work to gain the skill sets to go, right, now I'm ready to kill that boss.
Yeah. Sounds very, very Zelda-esque.
I used to play Zelda back in the day. That's why.
Yeah. Just to share, just on that, is that constant work is remembering that happiness is actually the joy that we experience striving towards our potential, so we can't settle. True happiness is healthy striving. So the struggle, like when you look back in the times where you can play your Rocky montage, if you wish, where you've been in the trenches doing the work, you'll probably look back and go, fuck, that was hard. But there's a slight joy in it. You're like, oh, I feel that pain. In the moment, you're like, oh, this is horrendous. But you look back and you go, yeah, I grew a lot. So the true happiness comes from that struggle, in my experience and my wisdom as well. So we can't settle.
I've got something to add on that. Where I am now, and if you're watching on YouTube, you could probably see like part of where I am. This is my office. And I'm in here a lot, right? And what I fucking love about this place is that I get to build stuff, right? And the output of that, the end result of that, like down the line, there'll be more things, more houses and more holidays and cars and whatever. There'll be more things. But what does actually bring me joy is being in here and building shit. And like last week, I did 3 podcasts, and I have to admit, every single one of them, I was fucking tired. One of them was at 6 o'clock at night. I had to get a babysitter in. It was last minute. I was like, oh God, I need to get... And I actually didn't want to do it. I'm like, I don't want to do this podcast because it's late and I'm really tired. I've done a full day. I've been up since 5, yada, 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 yada. And so there was pain there. And there was also uncertainty because I had no idea how it was going to go. I was being interviewed. And also I had to go through some constant work. And I got in here in my room and I jammed on the podcast and it was phenomenal. I came off that with so much energy, and it's that, right? It's like, Pete's brain, the inner enemy, the part X. Oh, mate, do you want to just cancel it? Come on, man. You've had a busy week. It's Friday night. You're going to do a podcast Friday night, 6 o'clock at night, when you should be spending time with Leo. Cancel it, mate. No, power on through, do the constant work, go through the pain, go through the uncertainty, and had joy during that podcast. And then after that, feeling real elate. My dopamine was up and I felt great, right? Then went and spent my Friday night with Leo. So
yeah, do you know what? I think just an observation and a question as well. Who would you rather have been? The guy that cancelled the podcast and been pissed off and resentful and spent time with Leo, being unpresent, resentful, or the latter?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if I'd have cancelled that podcast, I would have regretted it later. There would have been a likelihood I got on, Pete, I shouldn't have cancelled that. I should have just fucking done it. And I know that because I've done things like that in the past. This is a long time ago. Do you know what? I'm just going to cancel that. Can't be asked. Mm. Right, and then I have regretted that afterwards. And so that's a lever for me. Pete, don't do shit like that because you regret it.
You turn towards your pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just some pragmatic ways to deal with the fact that you're going to be in constant work for the rest of your lives, man. Enroll in a group where everyone is consistently and constantly expanding, whether that's a CrossFit gym, whether that's a bodybuilding gym, whether that's a program like ours. We've got Heroic Man, we've got Awaken Man. Everyone on those programs is expanding and growing daily on a daily basis. They are reporting back in about the ways that they are pushing into the constant work. They're doing it on the daily. Yeah, that's just like, if you ever want to change a behavior, habit, or a pattern of yours, just join a group where your desired habit is the norm of the group. So Awaken Man, Heroic Man, the daily norm is that guys are doing constant work. They're constantly sharing how they're pushing into the hard stuff. And then you'll just find your new level. Understanding that it isn't all unicorns and rainbows and we've got to feel it all, is that when we're doing constant work, that you're never going to be exonerated from that. And when the pain or the struggle shows up, you're like, it's constant. I remember that. I should be feeling this. I should feel like this because it's constant. And that for me, I even had it yesterday. I was like really feeling some pain and I was like, nope, I should be feeling like this because it's constant. This is never going to go away. And that just, it closed the gap between the reality and what I thought the reality should be. And the stress went. I still had the pain, but the stress about the pain went. And the final one is get a mentor. Get a mentor, someone who will keep holding you up to the constant work. Yassine was great for me in that arena. He constantly, and still does as a business partner, as a friend, holds a mirror up to me to show me where the next bout of work is for me. Here's your blind side. Get a mentor to show you where your blind sides are, because there is always a 1%, 10%, 100% growth for you in every part of your life. And feeling like you haven't got that, again, I do feel it's a juvenile mindset. It's not a mastery mindset. It's acknowledging we know the 1% and we're looking for the 99, not I know the 99% and I'm looking for the 1% to make me better. And I think that is such a more abundant way to think about our personal development. So guys, that's pain, uncertainty, and constant work. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. And if you want to carry on the conversation, feel free to follow me at Coach Benjamin Owen on Instagram or at Pete_Taylor, where you can observe his daily protocols as we talked about in this podcast. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, team.